Welcome to episode 88 on the law rapport. In today's episode, I'm going to deal with the role of judges in criminal proceedings. I was rather taken aback recently with a pre-law student who informed me that the main role of judges in criminal proceedings were to sentence convicted person to prison. But before I do get into the meat of the discussion, my usual disclaimer: this is not legal advice, should not be construed as such. For legal advice, please contact an attorney of your choice. Welcome back. The role of judges in criminal proceedings or in criminal trials. I will basically concentrate on the role of judges in criminal trials. And while doing so, I will also touch briefly on magistrates. Now, judges and magistrates play a vital role in the criminal justice system. Criminal cases come to the court after a decision has been made, usually by the Director of Public Prosecutions, to prosecute someone for an alleged crime. Most cases, and I mean the majority of cases, over 90% of criminal cases are heard in the magistrate's court, usually by magistrates sitting alone without a jury. They hear evidence and decide on the guilt and innocence of the defendant. And if the defendant is found guilty, the magistrate will decide the sentence. And if a defendant is found guilty in a Supreme Court trial, then the judge will decide the sentence. In more serious cases are heard in the Supreme Court in the Turks and Caicos Islands, usually by a judge sitting with a jury, although there are cases where a trial can take place by a judge alone without a jury. The judge is responsible for ensuring the trial is conducted fairly and explains the relevant law to the jury. When the judge tries a case with a jury, the jury is responsible for deciding whether the defendant is guilty or not. So in my view, the main role of a judge in a criminal trial is to ensure that the trial is fair, that both sides, the defense and the prosecution, have what I would say a fair crack at the whip. Now, there are instances where a magistrate can sit and try a case with a jury, but the majority of cases in the magistrate courts are tried by magistrate sitting alone. But section 112 of the Magistrate Court Ordinance states that all actions shall be tried and decided by a magistrate without a jury, provided that in actions of slander, libel, false imprisonment, malicious prosecution, seduction, negligence, or breach of promise or marriage, the plaintiff may, at the time of filing his plaint or his complaint, or the defendant may, within 4 days of the return of the summons, or either party may, by leave of the magistrate, that means by permission of the magistrates, at any later period before the commencement of the hearing, apply to have the issues of fact tried by the magistrate with a jury, and upon the same shall be so tried. So upon granting the application, the matter shall be so tried by magistrate and jury. And although this is not criminal proceedings, I believe it is important to mention this. The second avenue that the law allows for the magistrate to try any matter or to deal with any proceeding with a jury is under the coroner's ordinance. And according to section 3, the magistrate shall be ex officio coroner of the islands. But I must add very hastily that the Turks and Caicos Islands now have a dedicated coroner. Now, both magistrates and judges have the power to imprison those convicted of crimes if the offense warrants a custodial sentence. Before a criminal trial starts, the judge will familiarize himself or herself with the details of the case by reading the relevant papers. These may include the information known as an indictment, which sets out the charges on which a defendant is to be tried. The judge will also read any documentation and applications made by either party concerning the admissibility of evidence or for any motion or application for the exclusion of evidence. For jury trials, the judge supervises the selection and swearing in of the jury, giving the jury directions about their role in the trial, about their powers to decide any way they wish on the facts in accordance with the evidence that they would have heard, and warning them not to discuss the case with anyone or to do their own media or other research. Now, once the trial commences, the judge ensures that the case is conducted fairly and that all parties are given an equal opportunity for their case to be presented and considered. In other words, both the defense and the prosecution must be given a fair crack of the whip. The judge plays an active role during the trial, controlling the way the case is conducted in accordance with the relevant law and practice. As the case progresses, the judge makes notes of evidence and decides on legal issues, for example, as mentioned earlier, admissibility of evidence, etc. Once all the evidence in the case has been heard, the judge will then sum up the case to the jury. The judge sets out for the jury the law and each of the charges before the court and informs the jury what the prosecution must prove. At this stage, the judge may refer to notes made during the trial and reminds the jury of the key points of the case. In other words, summarizes the case for the jury, highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of each case. That is, the prosecution's case and the defense's case. The judge then gives directions about the duty of the jury before the jury retires for jury deliberation to consider the verdict. If at the end of it all, a defendant is found guilty, then the judge will decide what is the appropriate sentence. The sentence will be influenced by several factors, principally the seriousness of the offense, the impact of the crime on the victim and on society, the relevant law, and sentencing guidelines and precedents set from sentencing of defendants in similar cases. The judge will also consider the mitigating and aggravating circumstances of the case and any pre-sentencing reports and references on the defendant. Only once the judge has considered all these factors will the appropriate sentence of punishment be pronounced. And here is where I will leave it, folks. If you learn anything of value from this episode, please like, share, comment, and please give this a thumbs up. And I will see you very shortly in another episode. Bye.